Welcome to the Management Advantage. Y'all, one of the situations that land managers are faced with these days is what to do with old pasture land once the cattle have been taken off. It's a 5-step process that you must undergo for proper pasture conversion. So on today's show, we're going to walk you through this process. Right after the commercial break, we're going to be joined by Michelle Eisenberg from BASF. We're going to take you through this step-by-step process. We'll see you soon.
Dodge presents The Management Advantage, gaining the advantage through proper land management, with your host, Chuck Sykes, who is dedicated to sound wildlife management practices and principles that will help both sportsmen and landowners get the optimum potential from their land. This season, The Management Advantage is brought to you by BASF, Club Car, Tecumate Wildlife Systems, Sportsman Choice Record Rack Feeds, Lot Saver, Kershaw Knives, C&S Wildlife Services, The Edge Outdoors, Motorola Talkabout Series, Great Day Incorporated, and Wildlife Trends.
Well, Michelle, last year we talked to everybody about one-step site prep on clear cuts. Well, this year's a whole different ball game. We're looking at pasture conversion.
Right.
So what are we going to go through on this old field site to get it into productive wildlife habitat?
Right. Well, we have about a 5-step process that we're going to go through here, Chuck. And let me start by saying the reason we're going through a 5-step process is because these grasses are way more competitive than what most folks understand.
Right. A lot of people think if you just stick a tree out in this field, it's going to be okay, but your competition is worse in this pasture than it is out in a clear cut.
That's exactly right. These grasses are so much more invasive to pine trees. They take the nutrients, they take the water away from the pine trees. They compete at the ground level where the roots are, where we need to get those pines established the first year right away with little to no competition. And a lot of folks, just like you said, think they can put the trees in the ground and grasses and it's no big deal. But we're going to go through a 5-step process in order to get the longleaf established out here. First of all, we're going to come in and we're going to bush hog the area. The reason that we're doing that is that we want a decent root to shoot ratio out here for when we actually do spray the chemical. Right. If you've got a lot of really high grass out here, it's going to be just too much, too thick for the product to get down through. So we bush hog this the week of Labor Day, and this is the 4th of October, so we're about 4 weeks out.
All right.
And we're starting the 2nd step today. Good. And what we're going to do today is we're going to spray 48 ounces of chopper, 5 quarts of oil, 18 gallons of water off a ground tractor to site prep this area to get it ready to be planted, to control as much of these grasses as we possibly can.
And what grasses are we looking at? I know we've got Bahia and Bermuda. Is there anything else that we're trying to target?
Generally, most fields, be it fallow, if they're being used for haying, grazing, any type of agricultural use, will have your Bahia and Bermuda, but it can have fescue, Johnson grass, some ryegrass in it as well, but this particular field is mainly Bahia with a little bit of Bermuda grass.
All right, what's step number 3?
Step number 3 is in about 2 to 3 weeks, they're going to come out here with some mechanical equipment and they're going to subsoil the site.
Okay, so they're going to go into this old pasture and they're going to try to break that hard pan where the roots can go on down in there.
That's right. They want to break the hard pan to get the roots down in there, get them better established. That's another part that folks don't realize, at how hard it is to get trees in this ground.
Well, it's been cattle pasture, and those cows over the years have compacted this soil, even though it is a sandier site, and we're going in with longleafs instead of loblolly, it's still got compaction under there that you've got to come in and subsoil and break that hard pan, because those longleafs have a real deep root system and you've got to have a way for them to get down in there.
That's right, that's right. Step number 4 is going to be the planting of the longleaf. They're going to come out here probably mid to late November and put longleaf in the ground.
Okay, and then number 5 will be herbaceous.
A herbaceous treatment next spring. Very critical, because even though we are site prepping these grasses, we can't eradicate them. We can get pretty good control of them, but they have got such extensive rhizome systems and seeds that are already laying in this ground dormant, ready to come out. Landowners have to come out with a herbaceous treatment to ensure that the trees stay as weed-free as possible.
Right. So it's going to be one of those things, just like it's not a one-stop deal. You can't come in here, bush hog it, and spray it and it'd be done with. It's an ongoing process. if you want your timber and your wildlife to come back in here. So y'all, what we're gonna do, we're gonna bring you back in a couple of weeks. We're gonna show you the subsoiling of it. Then with planting and the herbaceous weed control later, we're gonna take you through every step of taking this old field site and putting it into a productive timber stand and also getting it ready for proper wildlife habitat. Well, y'all, it's been about 3 weeks since we put our herbicide out, and now we're back for step number 3 in our 5-step process in our pasture conversion, which is subsoiling. Now, over the years, grazing pressure on these old fields usually create a hard pan. In pasture settings, it's usually about 12 inches below the surface. In some agricultural fields, it may be as much as 2 feet below the surface, so you have to plan accordingly. This spot has just been grazed, so our hard pan is just about that deep. So what we're gonna do, we've got a homemade subsoiler that's gonna break that hard pan. It's gonna dig down from 12 to, in some places, about 18 inches. Now y'all, you can plant these trees without doing that, but they're not going to do as well. When you come in and break that hard pan, it gives those little pines access down to the lower moisture and nutrients that they need to thrive. Now step 4 will be planting containerized longleaf. Now we've got about a month break, so we'll bring you back in December and we'll show you the planting process.
Plotting for Wildlife, brought to you by Tecumate Wildlife Systems.
Welcome to this week's Plotting for Wildlife segment. Today we're going to be discussing with Brian food plot maintenance. Now once you get a good perennial field established, there's several things that you can do to maintain it where you get that 3 to 5 year growth period out of it. What do people need to do?
2 types of maintenance come to mind for weed control. Grass control will be mechanical, which is mowing or bush hogging, and the use of selective herbicides, selective grass herbicides, in order to combat those invasive grasses.
You need to come in early spring, March or April, and the first thing you really need to do is mow the top out of, if you plant a nurse crop like wheat or rye. Is that right?
That's correct.
So you come in, you knock the top out of it. You don't want to cut your clover too low. I mean, set your bush hog up, what, a foot, 18 inches?
Yes.
And just knock the top out of that grass. Then you can come back in with your selective herbicides. What kind of herbicides can you use that will not affect your legumes but will take out those grasses?
You can use Post, Select, Fusilade, Vantage. There's several different selective grass herbicides on the market, which all do a good job. Just read the label carefully. And what you want to try to do is you want to take out those competing grasses, wheat, rye, oats, any of the nurse crops that you may have planted in the fall. And if you start running into some crabgrass, Johnson grass, Bermuda grass, and it'll take that out as well.
And y'all don't get nervous when you see the size of this sprayer that we're standing by that Brian was using today. This is on a large food plot, so he's got a nice boom sprayer. For you guys with smaller food plots, Great Day makes a ATV sprayer with one nozzle that covers 15 feet, so you're not having to worry about bringing your booms in, going down your logging roads, getting to your food plots. So they make small mowers, small sprayers, just like they do big sprayers and big mowers for your larger fields. So there's no excuse. You've got the chemicals to do it, you've got the equipment to do it. If you just read and follow the label directions, you should be able to get 3 to 5 years out of these food plots.
Yes, sir. Good maintenance is the key to success in a perennial.
Now, what about liming and fertilizing?
Of course, I recommend soil testing annually to determine your pH recommendations, and of course your fertilizer recommendations as well.
So go in when? February? Get a soil sample and see, and as long as you've got that pH range, the closer to neutral you get, anywhere from say 6.2, 6.3 up to a little over 7, you should be in good shape.
That's ideal.
Y'all, on next week's Plotting for Wildlife segment, we're going to go back to Texas with David Marsh, and we're going to take a look at the reversible fence system. Well, y'all, we're back at our pasture conversion site for the next step, and that's the planting of the pine trees. Now, I'm going to introduce you to Tim Gables with CV Forestry. He's the forester that's overseeing this reforestation project. Tim's going to tell you what kind of seedlings he's planting, how he's planting, his spacing, and everything that you need to know to successfully reforest your old pasture land.
So what we have are containerized longleaf. They are the containers with the 5.5 inch, they call them plugs. And there's a couple of different sizes, 3.5 and 5.5 is the most common. I prefer the 5.5 inch plugs because you have a longer taproot, and with a longer container it gives you more to pack the soil around to hold the seedling in place. Packing of the seedlings is something that's very critical to survival.
All right, now what most people are used to looking at is a loblolly seedling. That's a bare root seedling. Now these long leaves, you got to take a little more care with them than you do a loblolly. That's the reason you want them in this containerized form to get better survival once you plant them.
Right, and that reason is with the soil that's around the taproot, you've already got all of your feeder roots, lateral roots, and mycorrhizae. Everything is in place in one container, hence the name container seedlings, and they're easily removed from the container trays at the nursery, shipped in the boxes, and then we take them out like this and they go right straight into the ground, and your root system is in place and ready to start growing.
What do we need to do when planting a tree?
Well, the first thing is, as you can see, we have followed we're following the subsoil row, and as you mentioned earlier in the program, the subsoil has broken up the hard pan,
right.
And so we want to plant the seedlings within 6 to 8 inches of the center of the subsoil row.
All right, why don't you plant it right in the center of it?
Over the last few years, the more of these we've planted, we have found out that if you plant in the center, some of the unsettled soil with the heavy rains filters in and covers up the bud on the longleaf seedling and causes mortality.
Okay.
So we're pulling to the side to alleviate that problem.
All right. What's the spacing on these now?
This is, of course, a CRP field, and the CRP regulations have dictated the space. We're looking for 544 trees an acre, which is going to put us on 8 foot between the trees, and we subsoil 12 foot between the rows.
Okay. So you're on an 8 by 12 spacing.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. One of the first things that we need to talk about is the depth that we need to plant the seedlings, and on the longleaf seedlings, the bud is at the base of the needles, and the bud is the most critical part of this tree. You don't want to cover the bud up when you're planting, and so what we like to try to do is leave about a 1/2 inch of the container sticking above the ground, and that also helps with lessening the chances of the soil, right, and covering up the bud. And so with the dibble bar, what we do is we job it in the ground, and you use the foot peg to open your hole. You want a nice open wedge-shaped hole, and you pull the dibble out, take the seedling, and you want to go to one side of the plug so that you've got the container up against the soil on the one side of the hole that you've got there, and then put the dibble just 1 inch or 2 behind the hole that you've made, and go back down in the ground and pull the dibble back to you. That closes the hole at the bottom, forcing the air out. Then push it forward, and that closes the top of your hole. And then as one more last check, take your heel of your boot and just go down right beside the seedling. It's critical that you don't go down on top of the seedling, because you can damage that bud.
Right.
And then just as a check, grab 3 or 4 needles, tug on it. If it doesn't come out of the ground, it's packed tight, and of course we've got the plug about a 1/2 inch above the top of the soil.
Forestry Facts, brought to you by BASF.
Welcome to this week's Forestry Facts segment. The tree that we're going to be discussing today is a sawtooth oak. Now, most of y'all are familiar with the sawtooth. It was brought over from the Orient because of its quick growth and tremendous mass production capabilities. Today we're standing in the orchard at the Wildlife Group. They take these sawtooths from these trees right here to the acorn, plant it, grow them off as seedlings, and take them straight from here and ship them all over the country. The sawtooth in 5 years can put on an acorn crop. It's got tremendous potential for wildlife production when it comes to a hard mass crop. Everything likes the sawtooth. Deer, turkeys, crows, whole host of other game and non-game species will eat acorns off of the sawtooth oak. Now, how you can distinguish a sawtooth from other oaks is by the leaf. The sawtooth has alternate, glossy, non-lobed leaves with fine serrations at the end that give it the name sawtooth. The sawtooth can be found in a variety of sites, from acidic to alkaline, moist to well drained, but it prefers a slightly more moist and acidic site. Sawtooths can be found in zones 5 through zones 9. Now, next week's Forestry Facts segment, we're going to take a look at the water oak. Y'all, we're back for step number 5 in our pasture conversion, which is herbaceous weed control. But as you can see from the pan of the field, there's very little weeds to control.
That's right, Chuck. Last fall we did 48 ounces of chopper for site prep, a real intensive site prep on these pastures, to try to keep the grasses out as long as we possibly can. And this year it just looks fantastic out here. With
the drought conditions and the intensive site prep, we've got very little competition. Typically what you have to do during this step is you bring a tractor in and either broadcast or band spray over these pines 6 ounces of arsenal. But we would pretty much be wasting our time banding and broadcasting the whole field. So all we're going to do is we're going to come in with a backpack sprayer. We're going to take out the strips that were missed during our site prep, and we've got this pasture well on its way to productive wildlife habitat and timberland.
Management Advantage Email of the Week, brought to you by C&S Wildlife Services.
Welcome to the C&S Wildlife Services Email of the Week. Today's question comes from Toby in West Virginia, and it's concerning tree shelters. Toby saw on an earlier show that we were using tree shelters when planting our fruit trees. And he just purchased and planted 26 new fruit and nut trees, and he can't find tree shelters. Well, Toby, we can help you get in touch with somebody to get those shelters. You can either go to our website, themanagementadvantage.com, or you can get in touch with Alan and the guys at the Wildlife Group at wildlifegroup.com. And we can help you get in touch with someone to get you the tree shelters. And y'all, the tree shelters will make all the difference in the world when you're planting fruit trees or mass-producing trees like this sawtooth right here. It increases the growth, it cuts down on herbivory, increases your survivability, and then once grasses and stuff get up this high, like around this food plot, that tree shelter will protect it when you come in with a selective herbicide and spray around to cut down on the competitions. So tree shelters will make all the difference in the world in your fruit and hard mass producing trees. Toby, thanks for the email. You can be expecting your hat and video soon. Y'all keep them coming. We may read it on the air next week. Y'all, this is my first Osceola on the first morning of the hunt. We're hunting at 6 Mile Plantation with H. Lawrence and Jared Williams. And we're hunting in about a 15-year-old longleaf pine stand that is a converted old pasture site. So y'all, if you follow the 5-step process that we talked about in today's show, you can see that the results kind of speak for themselves. It's excellent hunting from the time you plant them till they're mature trees. Y'all, pasture conversion is just one more way that we're helping you gain the advantage through proper management. We'll see you next week right here on the Management Advantage.
The Management Advantage, presented by Dodge, was brought to you by BASF, Club Car, Tecumate Wildlife Systems, Sportsman Choice Record Rack Feeds, Plot Saver, Kershaw Knives, C&S Wildlife Services, The Edge Outdoors, Motorola Talk About Series, Great Day Incorporated, and Wildlife Trends.
There's a place I go, tucked back in the pines, where a green field grows, my own little paradise. I'm thankful for this land and the life that it provides. See, the measure of a man is what he leaves behind. Oh, oh, take what you need and pass it on down. Oh, oh, give a little back to this sacred ground. You're on sacred